Welcome to the AFR Saints channel, where we provide you daily content on your favorite team, the New Orleans Saints. Do us a favor and hit that subscribe button. Be sure to leave your comments below and smash that like button. Who dat?
The New Orleans Saints offseason, I'm using air quotes around offseason because it's not actually a real thing. The Saints have no offseason. And if you don't believe me, just go to LouisianaSports.net, click on the Saints tab, and you'll see that Ross Jackson has just been pumping out content after content after content all week long. And a lot of it caught my eye, and I was intrigued by virtually all of it. So I said, hey, Ross, why don't you come on and kick some of it around with me? So Ross Jackson joins us now, of course, on Twitter, at Ross Jackson Nola, LouisianaSports.net, Locked On Saints. He's the best. Ross, how are you?
Hey, buddy. Doing great. Thanks so much for having me on, man. Glad to be here with you.
Absolutely. So, I mean, seriously, it seemed like every day I just opened Twitter or went to LouisianaSports.net, there was something else there that's like, oh, Danny Stutsman. Yeah, wait a minute. Oh, Yonas Sanker. Oh, 2 off-season moves they should make. Alante Taylor. So let's kick it around. Let's start with the offseason moves, Ross. And one of them that you start with is extending Alante Taylor. Now, obviously, he's not up for contract yet, but this is a practice you see a lot in the NFL where teams try to get this done. Is there an avenue there for the Saints to extend Alante Taylor before the 2025 season?
Yeah, I think so. We got to remember that it's a 2-lane avenue, though.
Yeah.
So it's not just, so yes, the Saints should be looking to do this, but Alante Taylor and his team of representatives, they might want to say, hey, we're going to bet on that 2025 season, and try to, bring the bag up for 2026 and hit unrestricted free agency where they can create some bidding wars and things like that. But I do think that the avenue is absolutely there. I think that the Saints will have the desire to get that done as well. The question will be, is it good for both sides? And so for New Orleans, the reason why I think it would be important is like Alante Taylor fitting into that star role in Brandon Staley's defense. That is a quintessential role for his scheme. And if you find that he's going to fit in there well, that he's going to be the guy at that position, then I think you want to try to get ahead of it and get him kind of locked down for an extended period of time. He's excited about the opportunity to work with Brandon Staley and the way that Brandon Staley plans to utilize him, build on that excitement, capitalize on that excitement, and see if you can keep him around for beyond 2024 or 2025. I'm sorry.
Coaches and players are never going to really talk about contracts. They don't like to do that, and that's understandable. Fine.
Mm-hmm.
But what you often see, and again, you said two-way street, and totally understand. What you often see with these sometimes is when there is mutual interest, it can linger into the season. Is that something you potentially see here? Or if the Saints approach and they can't get it done before, would they want that cloud kind of hanging over a first-year head coach in Kellen Moore?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, look, Kellen Moore won't have anything to do with it, right? It's something that would be going on off to the side. Alante Taylor's not, walking into meetings with Mickey Loomis to talk about his contract. It's Mickey Loomis and Kai Harley and the front office negotiating with Alante Taylor's team. And so at most, there's an awareness that there are these types of conversations going on, but it wouldn't create any kind of hindrance for Kellen Moore. And really, it would still allow Alante Taylor to focus on what's going on the field. We've seen this over the course of the past few years. The Saints have extended some player either in training camp or, as you mentioned, early on in the season. We saw it with Marshawn Lattimore week 1 of the season when they traveled to Jacksonville to go up against Green Bay. We saw it, I think it was week 2 or week 3 against the Raiders years ago with DeMario Davis. We saw it just a few years ago as well in Green Bay up against with the Carl Granderson extension. Last year, we saw Pete Werner extended during training camp. These types of things are pretty standard across the NFL and have been a practice that the Saints have kind of gone through on multiple occasions. So I think they do a good job of handling it without allowing it to become a distraction. And so Kellen Moore, Brandon Staley, Alante Taylor, ideally are some of the least impacted by the conversations because it's the Saints front office and Alante Taylor's team that are having the conversations until something's agreeable for both sides.
Just using past history with the New Orleans Saints, I mean, Ross, you've covered the team for a long time. What do you think the basis of a deal would look like?
I think you're looking at something that's probably 3 or 4 years that would go beyond sort of this 2025 season if he enters this kind of contract year. And I think that you're probably looking at something that ranges, I don't know, there are slot corners out there that get paid $20 million a year. There are those that are, down towards the $10, $12 million per year. So something that's probably front-loaded, that allows them, that's in between that range, that allows them to put guaranteed money in the early portions of the deal, push some of the larger base salaries towards the back end of the deal, but then have some non-guaranteed money in the final year. And that kind of helps everything balance out. So you can give the, market value, annual value per year, but still give yourself an outlet if things don't work out, or if there's injuries, or if there's any of those other things, or there's not a role for him, or he wants to pursue another opportunity. Like, you can kind of build a contract that would do that. So I would say something front-loaded, something 3 to 4 years, and something kind of in that wide range of those annual values for slot corners, which really, really kind of run the gamut.
The other offseason move you suggested the Saints make also pertains to the defensive side of the ball, and it's signing Matthew Judon, edge rusher Matthew Judon, to a 1-year deal. Why is Judon a good fit for the New Orleans Saints?
Yeah, I think the Saints would benefit from having another edge rusher in their rotation. Really, they've got 3 guys that aren't major question marks, and that's Chase Young, Carl Granderson, Cam Jordan. And so I think adding another guy that would be a little bit less of a question mark, that comes in on a super affordable 1-year deal, even though he's on the back part of his career, he had 5.5 sacks with the Atlanta Falcons last year, which has been a historically bad pass rush for 2 decades now, and that would have tied for the lead amongst defensive ends for sacks on the Saints defense last year, because both Chase Young and Carl Granderson also had 5.5 sacks. And so I think you would get somebody that has some familiarity with the coaching staff. He was with Jay Rodgers over in Atlanta, but then that puts him in a more advantageous system where he's not dropping back into coverage as much, where he's serving as a pass rush specialist, or where he gets the opportunity to be able to play to his kind of high standard and high level that he's still producing at and so capable of producing that at this point in his career. So I think it would just be a good fit, and would allot New Orleans another player to come in for 2025 and help contribute to that pass rush without as much of a learning curve as maybe some young guys they could have pursued in the draft, and then helps them kind of add another guy that's a little bit less of a question mark than some of the other younger guys that they have on the roster.
Is edge rusher the last position the Saints really need to address, or is there another one?
I think there's ones that, that they could probably look to address as well, but it's one of the last ones that has someone or some players on the market that would actually be helpful. Like, maybe tight end is a place where they could look to add more talent, but there's not really a very inspiring tight end market out there right now. Maybe running back's another place where they can continue to look to opportunities to continue to populate, but not really a very inspiring running back market that's out there right now, or those that are available in the open market. Cornerbacks may be another place. I mean, Asante Samuel Jr. is a guy that has some familiarity, or a lot of familiarity, with Brandon Staley. He visited with the team back in May, was going to get an early July medical recheck with the hopes of signing with the team in July or August. That might be a name to watch, certainly a name to watch. And so I think there are other places, but I think if you're looking for the place where there's talent still available that could come in and give you a lot of bang for the buck based on what the position needs are, edge rusher is a place that makes sense.
Talking with Ross Jackson, LouisianaSports.net, and of course the Locked On Saints podcast. You can get him on Twitter X at Ross Jackson Nola. All right, Ross, let's talk about the rookies, because you wrote a piece on 2 of them that caught my eye. Start with Danny Stutsman first, of course, linebacker from Oklahoma. Had a great college career, tackling machine, and I think a lot of people were intrigued by that pick. And we just haven't really heard much about Danny Stutsman. Why?
Yeah, I think a big part of it is that the Saints haven't really done much outside of 9-on-7s or 7-on-7s. Really didn't do anything outside of that when it came to OTAs, minicamp, stuff like that. And so without any real kind of rushing reps and things like that, we didn't really get to see him do the thing that he's most notable for, which is his ability to read play flows and go and attack the football or the ball carrier, his ability to shoot the right gaps and, fit runs and all these other things. We didn't really get to see much of that in a fast-paced environment where it would stand out, where he would catch your eye. And so I think that that's probably a big reason why we haven't heard a ton from him when it comes to his play on the field. And, there weren't a bunch of highlight things that kind of, popped off about him or anything like that. But I'll tell you that inside the facility with the people that I've talked to, they're really excited about this young man. They love his intelligence. They love his leadership capabilities, his vocal like how vocal he is, and they like what they're seeing from him from that sort of football coach nuance perspective, where you can watch a half-speed walkthrough and go, "Oh, that's a good thing that I just saw." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I think that from those angles, that's where he's impressing. But once he gets into training camp and they start running more team drills, 11-on-11s, I think he'll get a better opportunity to stand out at that point.
What role fits him best in this edition of the Saints in 2025? Will you still have Werner? You still have Demario Davis?
Yeah, I think right now, considering that those guys are going to be holding down that position group for right now, I would imagine him being the primary backup to Pete Werner makes the most sense. If, Demario Davis needs a spell, then I think that you move Pete Werner over to that linebacker spot where he's got the green dot, he's got the communications, that you let him be the guy that's quarterbacking the defense, and Danny Stutsman plugs in to where Pete Werner was. And then eventually you're probably giving Danny Stutsman the opportunities to kind of be that guy, the green dot guy and things like that. But I think that's an off season or two away. That feels like the thing that makes the most sense. He'll have to earn that role. I think he still has to leapfrog a guy like Nephi Sewell, who the Saints feel really good about. And then I think on three linebacker sets, when they do go to those, he could be one of the guys that mixes into those opportunities as well, especially because of his ability to play the run.
All right, last but not least, the other rookie you kind of featured in on was Yonas Sanker, and his ability to get on the field and potentially start as a rookie, which I think Ross at safety, they go out, they sign Justin Reed, they obviously have Tyrann Mathieu, two veteran options back there who have played football with each other in the past in this league with in KC. Mm-hmm. How does Sanker fit in there to where he can beat out those guys and get the starting spot?
Yeah, I think the thing that becomes really interesting is a kind of a deeper dive into Tyrann Mathieu's new contract. He has a $6 million base salary, so expect him to be on the field. There's no doubt about that, and expect him to be a starter, continue to be a starter. I think he still leads this team in interceptions, for instance, in 2025. Okay. But the thing that becomes really interesting is that he has all of these incentives that are based on playtime. So, percentage of snaps taken on defense and things like that. And so with those incentives, it's one of two things. Either the Saints are looking at, do they reduce his role, kind of like what they did with Cam Jordan last year, or do they look at, and therefore like utilizing him in moments that make the most sense and maximizing him in certain game situations, matchups, things like that? Or is it just simply them trying to protect themselves? Because Tyrann Mathieu had a couple of injuries throughout the 2025 season that he either played through or wasn't able to finish a game. He never missed a start, but there were certain times where he, got banged up and had to be off the field. And so both of those things and both of those sort of things that the Saints are kind of preparing themselves for would potentially open up opportunities for Yonas Sanker. So if Sanker can continue to kind of play to his brand as this downhill physical safety that can also go out there and make some plays, particularly taking away crossing routes, something that's killed this Saints defense in the past, and then be that active player in terms of his click and close ability, closing in on screen, outlet passes, 8.5 tackles for a loss last year at Virginia, and be that sort of, and take on a little bit more of that role, then if he's playing that and he's doing that at a high level in training camp, then he probably becomes one of the primary guys that would step in those cases where Tyrann Mathieu is not on the field for whatever reason. And so it would be a combination of things that kind of him playing well and living up to what it is that he did at Virginia gets him in position to take advantage if there's anything that allows him to be on the field that happens with Tyrann Mathieu. So I think it's more of like a joint situation there to where multiple things have to happen for him to get there. But if he has the talent, shows the talent, and does what it is in practice that got him drafted in the first place, he'll be waiting in the wings.
See what I mean? No offseason. It doesn't exist for the New Orleans Saints. Y'all go to LouisianaSports.net, read Ross Jackson stuff. Of course, Locked On Saints as well. Follow him on Twitter, X, at Ross Jackson. Ross, we appreciate it as always, man. You have a great and safe 4th of July weekend.
Thank you, buddy. Back at you. Take care. Stay safe. Thanks so much for having me on.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.